right on cue, Daniel Oyefusi of ESPN.com just hopped up into the waiting room. So let's welcome him in here. We've got over 2,300 of you concurrently watching us this Friday. We're getting ready, of course, for Ravens-Browns. It's a Week 8 contest in Cleveland, 1 o'clock on Sunday. And this guy got his start in Baltimore. And, Sarah, I feel like he's been hopping around ever since, to Miami, to Cleveland. Maybe I'm missing a couple stops in between, but he is now at the mothership, and I'm certainly happy for him. And I know Baltimore Sun readers are definitely going to recognize this guy, and folks that just haven't stopped following him since his stop here in Baltimore. Daniel, great to see you, my friend. And how are things going with you on your end?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's great to talk with you guys again. I know last time we talked, I was in Miami. It's changed since then, since I guess the last 6-7 months, and I'm in Cleveland now, so I'm enjoying it.
That's what I thought. I figured that was the case. Miami was last year, so you had the Dolphins perspective, and now, of course, as you see here on social, for everybody that wants to hop on the follow train here for Daniel, if you want to, he is now in Cleveland. And so, we always like to start, and maybe this is a loaded question given what's taking place, Daniel, but what the heck is the state of the Cleveland Browns entering Week 8?
Yeah, obviously a lot of frustration with the way things have started. 1-6. I think this was a team that entered the season with a lot of optimism, a lot of confidence that they could build off of a season where they won 11 games, made the playoffs despite so many injuries, including to the starting quarterback. And they really entered this season, building a system around Deshaun Watson that they thought would bring him back to kind of Pro Bowl form. And it's been anything but that. You've seen a lot of stuff around him that hasn't really shaken out the way that they expected. I think that including his play as well. He just before season-ending injury, he looked like a guy who really just kind of didn't have a lot of feel in the pocket, was missing targets, just didn't look comfortable at all. And obviously, it culminated in that Achilles injury last Sunday that kind of leaves them without their starting quarterback and kind of ends what was really an underwhelming season, for the second straight year, before injury.
Well, I guess I have two questions off of that. The one question is more long term. What's the outlook with Deshaun Watson going forward? But in the short term, given how Deshaun Watson was playing, Browns right now with the 1-6 record, is there maybe some optimism that a change with Jameis might actually give them a boost and start playing better?
Yeah, well, I'll start with kind of outlook with Watson. Obviously, we know that they gave him this 5-year, $230 million contract, fully guaranteed. There's still 2 years left, and they owe him $46 million in each of those next two seasons. So they are financially tied to him for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
They also restructured his contract before the year. So like
Oof.
if they were to cut him, it'd be a $172 million dead cap hit. So you wouldn't even be able to build a roster if you were to cut him or trade him, and he doesn't really have much trade value. He's undergoing surgery for his Achilles today. So in the meantime, they're turning to Jameis. I think that Jameis is well liked in the locker room. He obviously has that Jameis personality, that really gregarious personality that I think will allow a lot of people to gravitate him. And on the field, it's a little bit of a change in terms of style, where Deshaun he really had a hesitancy to push the ball downfield. Whether that was because of scheme, because of just trust in his arm, whatever the case may be, he didn't push the ball downfield. And Jameis is the complete contrast. Like, he will give his guys a chance for better or for worse. So now they're turning over the play calling duties from Kevin Stefanski to Ken Dorsey. The offense is going to be a little bit of a wild card, but if you're a Browns pass catcher, I think that you are a little optimistic that hey, maybe you can get the ball in your hands a little bit more going forward.
You just hit on what I was going to say, and that was on top of the quarterback change. It's that you got more change now with play calling too. So like, I've been following your tweets. I've been following the Stefanski conversation in terms of him being like, all right, this basically paraphrasing, it felt like this was the right thing to do. Why now though?
Yeah, that's the question. I think that there was a little bit of surprise about. No, I'll kind of, for background, Stefanski has called the plays like since he arrived in Cleveland as the head coach, and he's a two-time Coach of the Year winner. So like, he has the cachet to say like, I want to call the plays. Now they did bring in Dorsey to kind of shape this spread system. So a lot of people were wondering like, hey, would you allow Dorsey to call the plays? But he said, no, I'm going to continue to call the plays. We're going to work together to build this offense. And through, as the losses piled up, Stefanski kept on saying like, I'm going to call the plays, but we're going to look into everything. So for Deshaun to be out for the year, for you to go to Jameis, and kind of, theoretically, it looks like you're going to go back to your system, kind of the under center, West Coast play action pass type of scheme. It seems like a very weird time for you to say, hey, I'm going to give play calling duties for what is going to be kind of more of my scheme to somebody who's kind of a newcomer. So a lot of kind of weird decisions and non-decisions have been made, and this is kind of the latest in what's been a very confusing season for the Browns.
Well, last week they got Nick Chubb back. What did you see from him? And do you feel like it gave them a jolt? What's he looking like? How's he feeling?
Yeah, I think it definitely gave the team a bit of a jolt. Obviously, he came out, made his debut in front of their home crowd in Cleveland, so the crowd got a jolt. He didn't have the greatest success on the ground. He did get into the end zone, but I think he finished for 22 yards. The run blocking has been a problem in Cleveland this season, and I don't think that the return of Nick Chubb is just gonna kind of fix that. But you did see the power of the leg drive. He came out the game fine. I think the expectation is that he's going to get more of a workload because his snaps were limited in the second half. And I think that with the state of the offense, with Jameis being inserted now, I think that they might have to lean on him a little bit more than they expected. But by all accounts, we just spoke to Deuce Staley, the running backs coach. He said that he's looked good and he has the utmost confidence that he can kind of get back to that All-Pro, Pro Bowl caliber Nick Chubb that we saw before that injury last year.
What's undeniable when you look at the defensive rankings here, and this certainly wasn't the case when you were covering the Ravens on a daily basis, at least not to this extent, but the 32nd ranked passing defense compared to the first ranked rushing defense, it's night and day and then some. It's been very jarring to watch. We understand obviously the change and the time that it takes to go from, the young brightest mind out there to a first year defensive play caller. But we're entering week 8 now, Daniel, and this offense might be humming and carrying this team. But at some point, you get the sense that this passing defense is going to become their Achilles heel. What are you hearing around the building there? We know Jameis is unafraid. Just take a look at his past interception numbers. He's not afraid to sling it, but sometimes he can become a little bit reckless there, a little bit of give and take. So how do you think the two match up? And does he have the dogs, the Judys, the Moores of the world? Does he have the playmakers to truly test the Ravens secondary?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup to watch there because, Deshaun ranked, bottom of the league in air yards per attempt. Jameis, throughout his career, has been, toward the top of the league in air yards per attempt. So he's going to throw the ball down the field. And I think, even we saw when he went in as the emergency quarterback, like it was kind of, I don't want to say garbage time, but it's kind of late game situation. They're down by 2 scores. But he was pushing the ball downfield, and there was a lot of rhythm to it as well. Ken Dorsey, when he was with Buffalo, he threw the ball a lot. So I do expect them to go out throwing the ball, but I think they do want to remain balanced and they do want to lean on Nick Chubb a little bit. And it's going to be an interesting kind of interesting to see the game plan because I think that maybe they can use Nick Chubb as a bit of a decoy in his second game back, kind of use the threat of handing the ball off to Nick Chubb to kind of open some stuff, over the middle of the field. So I think this game is going to be telling. That matchup is going to be telling on both sides because if the Ravens, allow James to just kind of throw the ball all around the field to a kind of unheralded group like Jerry Jeudy, hasn't made the impact that they anticipated so far. Outside of him, you've got David Njoku, who's a really good tight end, but he's probably the top priority in the passing game. But outside of that, you have Cedric Tillman, Elijah Moore, like guys who really shouldn't take over a game. If they allow Jameis and those guys to do that, I think you kind of have to kind of ring the alarm in Baltimore, and vice versa. Like if this is an offense that inserts Jameis, who's known for being a gunslinger, and you really can't get much going against a 32nd ranked pass defense, maybe you have to look at this offense being bigger, the issues on the offense being bigger than just Deshaun Watson.
Daniel, last year the Ravens and the Browns were almost neck and neck, going back and forth in being the best defense in the league. Both have fallen off. The Ravens maybe a little bit more. What's happening with the Browns defense? Certainly not the problem compared to the offense. Are they just constantly put in bad positions, or do you feel like they're playing worse? Can you take us inside the defense? And then secondary to that, we've heard a lot of talk about maybe Zadarius Smith being traded. I know the Browns already traded Amari Cooper. Is there any truth to him kind of being available in a potential trade?
Yeah, well, with the defense as a whole, they were an elite, like the Ravens, they were an elite unit last year, and I think that some regression is to be anticipated, expected. I think that obviously having a deep offense that was just as poor as the Browns have been this year, like yeah, you're gonna get put in some tough spots. Like they played pretty well against the Bengals last week, but after a while of just kind of being put on the field, especially in prime position, field position, like at some point you're gonna kind of give up some plays. I will say I think opposing teams this year are a little better prepared for that Jim Schwartz game. This is a very aggressive defense that likes to blitz and play man coverage on the outside, and I think that we've seen opposing teams find ways to exploit that. Whether that's misdirection, whether that's attacking the edges, whether that's screens in the opposite direction of the blitz. And I know I spoke to a Browns defender the other day that said like we're trying to kind of disguise. Their looks a little bit more because usually they just go out and say like this is what we're going to do and you got to beat us, and last year it worked, but now that teams are going out there, they're not really changing the picture pre and post snap. They can just kind of look at what they see pre snap and attack. So I think that they are trying to make some changes, but definitely I think opposing teams have kind of caught up to what they've been doing the past year plus. And Zedarius as well. Yeah, I mean, they traded Amari Cooper, which I thought was kind of a fortuitous deal, like to get a third round pick for a 30-year-old wide receiver who was on the final year of his contract. I think that was just a deal that they couldn't pass up. I don't think the Browns are in like kind of the territory where they're just gonna just sell out on a bunch of guys, but they do have an aging roster, and I think that this offseason there's going to be tough conversations on how to kind of replenish the roster, and the easiest way to do that is to recoup some picks for aging guys who might not be on the roster anyway in a year or two. So Darius Smith is one of those guys who is still playing at a really high level, and there's obviously a lot of desire for a veteran pass rusher, not only in Baltimore but across the league. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a deal, but it has to be the right deal for them. And it's not just a matter of just getting guys off the team. It's a matter of if the value that they're getting back is worth it.
Listen to what Grant Delpit had to say about the Ravens tight end game, in particular Mark Andrews, and then I got a question for you on the back end of this, Daniel.
Mark Andrews is back to form. He's had kind of a quiet last 2 years.
Yeah, no, I think that Likely is showing up more. I think that he's kind of becoming their more go-to guy. So, but it's two good tight ends that they have.
All right, one of Cleveland's safeties right there speaking earlier in the week. Mark's been coming on the last couple of weeks, and I'm not saying that Grant or anybody in that building is overlooking what Mark is, what he was, what he still is, based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. What I wanted to get at is it seems as if coverage of tight ends, defending tight ends, has been one of the Achilles heels of many with this defense. One, have you seen that? And two, are you expecting a big night for Mark Andrews?
Yeah, I think over the middle of the field, because those cornerbacks on the outside, have a really good, especially Denzel Ward. So I think that the middle of the field is definitely a place that teams have exploited. They have dealt with some injuries in that safety room. Juan Thornhill came back his first game back from a calf injury. They've been missing some depth guys, that kind of complement that group. So yeah, the safety matchup with the tight ends is going to be one to really watch. I will say that there's a lot of respect for Isaiah Likely. In this facility where I'm at right now, we just spoke to their safeties coach not too long ago, and he was just kind of gushing over the way Isaiah Likely has come on in all areas of the game. So yeah, obviously, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman have been having really, really excellent years. But we know what the Ravens can do in those 2-3 tight end sets with not only Mark Andrews, but Isaiah Likely and Charlie Kohler. And I think that whether it's Riley McLeod, Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, that's going to be a really interesting matchup in the middle of the field.
Bobby, unless you have anything else, I got the final question going out. We always ask Daniel, I know you've been on the show before, maybe one matchup to watch and then your prediction for the game.
That's a really good question. One matchup.
I'll tell you mine. Give you a second to think about it because
Yeah, go ahead.
This Jared, not to interject, but just to give you an extra 30 seconds, maybe. I feel like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is an athlete that can hang with Lamar. Like, he's not Lamar, but he's one of those linebacker freak athletes that in the past has been able to hang athleticism wise with Lamar. So I'm going to be watching that for sure. How about you?
Yeah, that's a really good one. He talked about how that's been kind of like a go-to matchup for him over the years.
Yeah.
I will say, I think that early in the year we saw the Ravens have trouble with some of these like strong defensive lines who are strong, up the front, interior defensive line. The Browns say that the defensive line is the engine of that defense, and whether it's Dalvin Tomlinson is kind of like that run stuffer, Maurice Hurst, Shelby Harris, like they're going to rotate a lot of guys in there. So if they can be disruptive in the run game, and kind of limit their Derrick Henry, force the Ravens to be a little more one-dimensional than they'd like to be, and then you get that Myles Garrett coming off the edge, Zadarius Smith coming off the edge. I think that the priority for the Browns is definitely stopping the run first. So if they can do that with the interior of the offensive of the defensive line, I think this matchup gets a little more interesting.
And what's your prediction, Daniel?
Oh man. I'm taking the Ravens. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than people anticipate. I think that Jameis will provide a little bit of a spark. But yeah, I think it'll be a similar script where we've seen like the Browns have been fairly competitive in most of their games, but when you get into the third quarter, fourth quarter, and the offense really just can't sustain drives, that's usually when teams have been able to pull away, and I think that's what we'll see on Sunday.
I got to show you some love, man. Do you ever say no to segments? I mean, for real.
This week I always gotta show love to the folks back home. So I don't think I said no to. I think I said no to very few. But
Yeah.
when you reached out, I was like, gotta make time for y'all for sure.
Oh,
Well,
appreciate that.
look, dude, it goes without saying. We do appreciate that. We noticed that. I mean, the fan, Cole, you've been all over the place. So keep crushing it. It's been an awesome. I feel like I say this exact same thing last year. Let's see where you are this time next year because it just went from the Sun to the Herald right now to ESPN.com. So I hope you keep climbing
Maybe
that
the
thing.
Athletics next. We don't know.
You never know.
I'm just always bouncing around. Who knows?
You never know. But pump for you, man. I hope you enjoy this weekend.
Thank you. Great. Happy to see all your success too.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Daniel.
Oyefusi of ESPN.com, Sarah. That's the guy right there. Literally joining us from the Browns facility, as you could see by his background. Go hit him up on Twitter or X at Daniel Oyefusi. He's been climbing that media ladder and kind enough to spend some time with us here today.
So just to wrap up this Browns preview segment, obviously we want to give our predictions here. I know you gave a matchup to watch, and so did Daniel. Mine is just Myles Garrett against the Ravens tackles.
Anybody.
Yeah, anybody, wherever he's lined up. Like Roger, I mean, it'd be awesome if he was lining up against Ronnie, but I imagine he'd try to go over and test the rookie. And I feel like Daniel's right. I feel like the games are won in the trenches, and where the Ravens have struggled is when the offensive line just cannot handle the defensive line. That will affect both Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. But obviously Myles Garrett is the leader of that, and he's a game wrecker. And so the Ravens keep churning out yards and points, and they only let teams in when they have turnovers. Last week it was when Lamar threw a backwards pass to Zay Flowers, and that opened the floodgates. The defense couldn't stop him after that. So the Ravens offensive line cannot let Myles Garrett wreck the game. So that's what I'll be watching. For me, Bobby, I understand what he's saying. Like the Browns have been competitive, but the Ravens have been playing against people that are more than competitive. The Ravens have been playing against all these other quarterbacks who people are saying, oh, they're in the MVP conversation. And then Lamar Jackson comes around and squashes that narrative. So I just don't think the Ravens offensively are just on a different level. They're number one, and they're number one for a reason. So my prediction is that the Ravens win. I'm going to go 33-14.
Okay. There's one statistic that I think is the difference here, and that is the fact that Cleveland has not eclipsed 20 points so far this season.
Mm.
And they're going up against the most high-powered offense in this entire league, and they've never faced the duo before.
Right.
They've faced Lamar. They've had answers for Lamar in the past. That's why I referenced Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, but now they need double the amount of answers. And so I think that Daniel is definitely onto something here. with the Winston spark prediction. I think he's going to give Cleveland a spark. But much like Baker Mayfield, if you put pressure on him, if you take him outside his comfort zone, if you knock him off of his saddle a couple times, he's going to start to get reckless. And Baker was reckless at times in that first half. Just ask Marlon Humphrey about it. I think Jameis can easily, especially with how little start time he has had in recent seasons, will easily be able to be knocked into reckless mode past Jameis. That's not to say that he's not going to have success. That's not to say that they're not going to attack the Ravens vertically. The strategy is clear when you go up against the Ravens defense. And I do believe that the Browns are going to be able to put up some points. Not enough to keep pace with Lamar Jackson and Todd Monken right now. Ravens win 35-20 on Sunday afternoon in Cleveland.
Nate Wiggins, watch out. Maybe he'll get his first NFL interception.
Yeah, first could have been fifth, could have been fourth. Could have been. I'm sorry, Nate, to do you like that, but you know it. You already know it.
On Wired last night, by the way, if you watched Wired, when Marlon Humphrey got the pick instead of him, they're like, you got to be greedy. There are a lot of people out there trying to get that ball. You better go and get it. And he's like, all right, I got you. So he's got to be greedy against Jameis Winston on Sunday.